Good morning, a good Erev Shabbos. Hope you all had a wonderful week, the first week back after Sukkot. Hope you had a productive week. It could be a wonderful winter ahead. Um, it should be good for you, Ben Baruchnis, Ben Begashmis. I should be healthy, well, wealthy, and happy. Today we're finishing up Perek Yud of Masechah Sheviis. That's the final Perek of Sheviis, Rosh Hashem. And today's shiur is sponsored Ilay Nishmas Aaron Nachman ben Simcha Cohen, Yeshua Mordechai ben Shepsel, Bracha Sarba Shmuel Leib, and Binyamin Moshe ben Yosef ben the Shabbos have an Aliyah. Today's Perek talks about Shemitah's Kesafim, the final Perek. We know we learned all about the Shemitah of the land. Now we have to deal with the monetary topics. So, in addition to the agricultural laws, the Torah says that all debts are to be canceled at the end of Shemitah. Now, there's a machlokas in the poskim whether that means the beginning of Shemitah or the end of Shemitah, but we'll leave that for the halacha shiur when it comes to Shemitah itself. But for the purposes of this shiur, it's the end of Shemitah is when all debts are canceled. Now that's only al pi d'oraisa. So when Shemitah is d'oraisa, then that's when that applies. When Shemitah is d'orabanan, we're going to learn soon about the concept of a principle. We'll get into that shortly. So Mishnah Aleph starts off Sheviis mishametes es ha milva. Shemitah cancels every loan. Bishtar, shelo bishtar. Whether it was recorded in a document that includes a lien on the borrower's land or not recorded in a document with a lien. And even if it was a verbal loan that was not recorded at all. So the Mishnah, so now we're talking about other types of debt. Hakapas hachanus en mishametes. So debt for items that were bought on credit in a store is not canceled. Like a credit card loan. You rang up a credit card bill, you went shopping, you bought the fancy cars, you bought the fancy stuff. That's not going to get canceled because of Shemitah, because it's not a loan. It's a bill. You owe the money. You took the goods. However, if you converted the debt into a loan, meaning that the shopkeeper calculated the total with the customer, now views the debt as a loan, now it's canceled because essentially he borrowed the merchandise and in uh, in in exchange for paying the money. So I guess in some ways you consider that to be a loan. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Yehuda says Harishon Mishamit. Each time a customer makes a new purchase, his earlier debt is automatically converted into a loan, and therefore the former balance is canceled by Shemitah. Schar sachir in Mishamit. You owe wages to a hard worker. That's not canceled because that's not a loan. That's wages earned. That has to be paid. Milva But if he converted the debt into a loan, it is canceled. What does that mean? The worker calculated the total that he is owed and now views the debt as a loan rather than as payment for a job. You owe me the money. That's a loan. That's canceled. So Riyosi Omer, Riyosi says, Kol malacha sheposekes b'shvius mishametes. That the wages owed for any work that must stop during Shemitah, such as plowing or harvesting, are canceled. So, I mean that the farmer or the laborer whose malacha that he does is also during Shemitah because it's not going to be hired for another year, right? Therefore, he has to demand payment. if he does not demand it, um, and he agrees to, it's as if he agrees to lend the employer the, the money. Therefore, that's considered a loan and it's canceled. He should demand this money right away and not take it as a loan. But wages owed for work that is mutter during Shemitah is not to stop. That's not canceled because he's not demanding it because he expects to be hired again soon. Therefore, the debt is not considered to be a loan. That's according to Rabbi Yossi. So now we're talking. Now the next Mishnah needs a little bit of intro because we're talking about the debt that incurred on Rosh Hashanah. So now we know that the Chodesh, that the new month is really LP, that you had to have the witnesses come to the base of Mikdash and testify that they saw the new moon. So either sometimes you have Rosh Chodesh after 29 days, and sometimes you have it after 30 days. So that means that the first day of a month can, there's machlokas when that is. So now, if when Rosh Hashanah falls out, Rosh Hashanah is the first day of Tishrei. But in the Beis Hamikdash, nobody would know which day was the first of Tishrei until Beis Din decided which day was Tishrei, and that would be done based on the edus of that two people saw the new moon. But that gets kind of complicated when it comes to Yontif. But regular Rosh Chodesh is one thing. When it comes to Yontif, it's a problem. So to resolve the issue, the 30th day after the start of the month of Elul was always observed as Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because it was likely that day would be declared as the first of Tishrei. So therefore, if the court determined that the Elul had 30 days, it emerged that the day was technically part of Elul. And then the next day, which is the 31st day from the start of Elul, would be the first of Tishrei. So now, here's the issue. So Mishnah Beis starts off, Hashochet es hapara, the chilk of Rosh Hashanah. Someone slaughtered a cow at the end of Shemitah and divided it up amongst a group of people on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, which is the 30th day of Elul, the 30th day after the start of Elul. So im haya achodesh me'ubar shamet. So if the court decided the month of Elul was extended, meaning that it'll last for 30 days, and therefore today, which we thought was Rosh Hashanah, is really the 30th day of Elul, and Rosh Hashanah is tomorrow. So therefore, the debt for the meat is now canceled because it's the last day of Elul, and it's the last day to cancel all debts, and therefore anyone who owes money for this meat from that day of what was supposed to be Yontif, all those debts are now canceled. So in love, but if Elul is not extended, and really Elul ended yesterday, and that today is the first day of Tishrei, therefore anyone who owes money for the meat that they ate on that day is not canceled because it's the start of a new year and Elul has officially ended, and so did the Shemitah year. Very interesting thing. So the fine and the financial penalties that are owed by a violator and a seducer or one who slanders his wife. The whole ma'ase based in Eno Mishmatim, or any debt, even a loan that is backed by a written court order, is not canceled by Shemitah. I guess that means also parking tickets or traffic violations. Which it's authorized by the court, unless you fight it. Those will not get canceled by Shemitah. You should already know from such things. Hamalve al hamashkon, if someone lands on collateral, he gives an object, most there, the based in, or if he gives a creditor, or if a creditor gives his loan documents to the court for them to collect the loan for him, and this is not canceled because these do not meet the Torah's criteria for canceling loans. Now that we mentioned about giving your loans to Beis Din, now the next five Mishnayos talk about prosbul, which is a document, a device that the Chacham instituted to collect loans during Shemitah. Mishnah Gimel, prosbul ena mishame, a loan for which a prosbul is written was not canceled during Shemitah. This is what one of the things that Hillel Hazakin established. When he saw that people refrained from lending each other money as Shemitah approached, I had a fear that the loans would be canceled. Over the Torah, and they thereby transgressed the Isser that's written in Parashas A. I think we read it on Shmini Atzeres. Hishama lecha pen yed davar im levacha b'li'ayil. Beware, lest there be a lawless thought in your mind, saying that the quote that the seventh year is approaching, the year of cancellation, and you are stingy toward your needy brother, and you do not give him a loan. This should be a sin upon you. That's the psukim. So his skin, Hillel prosbul. So Hillel instituted the prosbul so that people would have a means of protecting their loans and would not refuse to lend money. Parenthetically, prosbul is short for pros ule bute, which means a solution for the rich and the poor. Meaning that by means of prosbul, then the rich can lend without fear of losing their money, and the poor will find loans available. So as we said before, that the even though Shemitah's Kesafim is a Torah law, which Hillel did not have the authority to circumvent, but in his time, Shemitah was only Derabanan, and therefore he had the authority to overrule a rabbinic decree. But when Mashiach comes back, what comes and the third base when comes, and the Shemitah is now D'oraisa, the prosbul is going to lose its effect. Stay tuned for further updates on that in the coming years. Mishnah Dalet, Zehu Gufo so this is the essence of a prosbul. So the creditor says before a court of three judges, Moser ani lachem ish ploni ploni hadayanim shemakom ploni. I give to you. He names each judge by name. The judges who are in this place. So kol chov sheyesh li shagavenu kozman sheretz. Every debt that I am owed, so I will be able to collect them whenever I wish. So with this, the creditor, gives his debts over to the court, and since the court is not subject to the laws of loan cancellation, and the debts are not canceled by Shemitah, and this declaration is recorded in a document, and the judges or two witnesses sign at the bottom. That's it, plain and simple. Mishnah Hey, prosbul hamuktam kasher. A predated prosbul is valid, meaning that if a creditor makes a prosbul, let's say in Kislev, which is at the beginning of the year, or records a date as Tishrei 2 months earlier, it's fine. Because by doing that, the creditor only harmed himself, since he will not be able to use the principal to collect loans made after Tishrei. But a post-dated principal is possible because it can be used to collect debts unlawfully. For example, if he made a principal in Tishrei but recorded the date in Kislev, then he might use it to collect money that was lent in Cheshvan, which is not protected by the principal. Therefore, it is usher. Shtarei chov hamukdamim psulin. Pre-dated loan documents are not valid to use to collect a lien because for the same reason they could be used to collect from property that is not under lien. Achrim kasherim. However, post-dated loan documents are valid to use to collect the lien because they cannot be used unlawfully. Echa chamisha principal. So now, if one person borrowed money from 5 people, then a principal must be written by each creditor. The guy took out 5 loans. Each creditor takes out a principal for each of those loans. Because the principal is written by the creditor and not by the borrower. Chamisha lovim echad eno kosiv el principal echad lakulam. However, if 5 people borrowed money from one person, he writes only one principal for all of them. Because a single principal covers all the debt. So let's say let's say gemach, whatever, or if you lend out money to people and you lend it out to multiple people, you only have to go to based on once and make one principal. But the guy who borrowed money from 5 people are going to go to Basin and make a principal for each of their loans. Okay, Mishnah Vav. Ein kosher principal al hakarka. You can only write a principal if the borrower has land. If he doesn't have land, then he can't do it. So, because the principal makes it as if the creditor holds the land mortgage to the loan before Shemitah, and therefore the loan is not subject to cancellation. If the debtor has no land, then the creditor can grant him a small amount of land which within the creditor's own field, and a principal can be written based on that allotment. If the debtor owns a field in the town that is being held by another creditor as security for a different debt, you may still write a principal based on it. Interesting. Rabbi Chutzpah says, we may write a principal for a loan made by a man based on property owned by his wife, and for a loan made on behalf of orphans based on property owned by the guardian who borrowed the money for them. Even though these parcels of land are not owned by the borrowers in the conventional sense, they suffice to allow principal to be written based on them. Okay, Mishnah Zayin, continuing on. We're almost done with this Masechta. Kaveres devorim, a beehive that rests on the ground. It says, Hare he kakarka is considered as land, and must, goes for that principle, and we can write. You can write a principle based on it, just as if he owns the land, even though it's a beehive. They ain't on the kabbalah tuma, on the coma, and it cannot contract tuma if it's in its place on the ground, just as land cannot contract tuma. Someone who removes honey from it on Shabbos is chayev for uprooting something from the ground. So don't do that. The Chachamim say Karka is not the beehive is not considered as land, but it's metallic, it's a movable possession. The ain kosrin haler principle, and we may not write a principle based on it. And it can contract tuma even if it's in its place. I wrote that the man of Shabbos, but someone who removes honey from Shabbos is not liable. So obviously, the Lezer argues with the Chachamim on this. Mishnah Ches, now, if the loan got canceled and the debtor tries to repay a debt after Shemitah canceled it, so the creditor should tell him, I canceled this debt. It's already gone. But if the debtor says to nevertheless, I want to pay you, then the creditor may accept the money from him. For it says that this is the matter, literally the word of the cancellation. I mean that's canceled because the creditor says that's canceled, but once he says this, he may collect the money if the debtor insists on paying. Similarly, if an unintentional killer was exiled to his ir miklat, to a city refuge, and the people of the city wanted to honor him, then he must say to them, I'm a killer and I don't deserve honor. If they tell him, nevertheless, we want to honor you, he may accept the honor from them. For it said, this is the matter, the word of the killer. Could you just imagine for a second, like the yeshiva of the Ir Miklat is making the annual dinner, and they have a Rotzeach there, and they found out the guy has a lot of money, so they're gonna honor him as the annual honoree, and now he's got to call all his people from all parts of Israel around the world to the dinner of the Ir Miklat where he is stationed. I mean, the whole thing just sounds so ludicrous, but whatever. Not my story to judge the not my place to judge the Mishnayos, but it's just mind-boggling. Mishnah test, final Mishnah. If someone repays a debt, even though it was canceled by Shemitah, the Chachamim are pleased with him, even though the debts are legally canceled, but they encourage people to go above and beyond the law and repay your debts. So now, if someone borrows from a convert whose children that were born to him as a non-Jew converted together with him, and then the convert died, the borrower does not have to return the money to the convert's children, because when a person converts, he says if it take a newborn child, and therefore all of his wife and his children and all his relatives are no longer considered to be his relatives. They're not legally considered to be his heirs. However, if the borrower returns the loan to the children, even though he knows this, then the Chachamim are pleased with them for doing so. And finally, that all movable objects are acquired by drawing them near oneself. You have to pick up the object. It's not enough to actually pay for it. So until 1 second. So it does not, even though you paid for the item, it does not become the buyer's property until he physically takes hold of it. Until then, each party can technically back out of the sale. Whoever keeps his word, does not back out of the sale agreement, even if the buyer did not yet take hold of the object, and the sages are pleased with him. I'm just wondering, before I wrap this up, when you go into the grocery store and you take a shopping cart and you start putting things into your shopping cart, um, so I picked it up and I put it into my shopping cart. So is that considered mine? So I said that I by putting it into my cart, I'm making a statement that I'm buying this item. I didn't pay for it yet because I'm still shopping. I'm still going. And once I go to the register and then I pay for it, then it's fine. But if I'm walking around the store and I say, you know what, I'm gonna put these two items back. And I got too much stuff. I want to put three items back. So is that a problem? You know, maybe it is, maybe it's not. Because I took possession of it. I held it, but I didn't pay for it yet. It's still in the store. What about returning stuff? You bought it, you took it home, you want to return it. Is that a problem with a chum? I don't know. Just food for thought. Anyways, hi John Allah Sheviis. We will see you on Sunday. We start nice Trumas and have a wonderful Shabbos. Kol Tov.